Mark Lamont Hill on this. Oh, hang on. Dang it, JB. Come on, get it together, brother. All right. Share the screen. All right, let's go. Let's go. Let's go. This is on the griot, by the way.
Welcome back to the griot. This is Mark. I am joined by Dr. Michael Eric Dyson. He's been talking to us tonight about everything from religion to pop culture. Doc, I got to ask you a little bit about politics as well. We were just talking about the blogosphere and the role of social media. It seems to me that there's a whole universe out there that gets its politics from social media as well. And in that space, people like Candace Owens have become giants. In that space, we see a kind of Black Republican movement. We see folk who don't believe the world is round. I mean, all this stuff operates. I mean, it seems like there's a whole other community of knowledge that didn't exist before. Is it dangerous?
Oh, man, it's dangerous. You brilliantly summed it up. It's extremely dangerous. And speaking of misinterpretation, I'll say Kobe and I'll say Jesus is Lord. So what's interesting is so what's interesting is that what I was hinting at when I said like the Black Trumpism, I know that's kind of extreme and exaggerated, but it ain't really that exaggerated, because what's happening here is that we're giving up on traditional ways of knowing the world, which were themselves already shot through with all kind of contradictions and problems. But the difference is if you're getting your news from social media. Now, if social media is the delivery mechanism to download the Washington Post or the Nation or the Guardian or whatever progressive or conservative magazine you happen to be reading, that's one thing where they...
Okay, stop right there. First of all, he's like, well, it's cool if you download any of the corporate media sites that actually have also been the stenographers for the state, the stenographers for our foreign policy that has ruined other countries, the stenographers for our domestic policies that have given us austerity. That's okay? Is that okay? Have we seen what they've been putting out? Like, hell, look at the last 23 years, 22 years about, where the MSNBC was championing the Iraq War.
Mm-hmm.
And now we look back, we go, wait, y'all shouldn't have been doing that. In fact, they fired, what's his name, Phil Donahue, for going against the Iraq War.
Yep, just like that, Phil was gone.
Yeah. So you mean to tell me that we have to have this, it feels like he's saying this uncritical type of eye when it comes to these corporate media. And it's like, wait a minute, just because they have the credentials doesn't mean that they actually are truthful, right?
Right.
They may have some things that are correct, which we will point to sometimes, but there's other times where they may say something that's really propaganda for us to keep the same establishment the way it is.
Did he mention, he said Washington Post too, right? Did he say Washington Post? Could you send me the link to the video, JB, so I can share it on my end, because I got volume booster because the volume's kind of low.
Oh, okay. Hang on.
Because I think if he said Washington Post, I mean, I've seen the Washington Post have to retract statements multiple times. So yeah. I don't know if you consider them trustworthy.
Yeah.
Okay, I got the link. And what's the timestamp on that?
It's 129.
Okay. Let me put
actually, if you want to go back a little bit to like I'd say 110.
Okay, 110. Because I got booster. And let me go ahead and share. Yeah.
Give me a boost.
Boost. Give me a G. G, you got your G. You got
your G. You got your G.
You got your
E. You got your E. Do ya? Sorry.
All right, let me try to use the booster. I just got to play it to do it.
Okay.
And problems. But the difference is if you're getting your news from social media. Now, if social media is the delivery mechanism to download the Washington Post or the Nation or the Guardian or whatever progressive or conservative magazine you happen to be reading. That's one thing where they vetted these ideas, where journalists have been journalists and tried to look at trying to be as fair as possible. But you ain't got none of that kind of constraint going on in the world of the blogosphere. For instance, a Black woman was claiming that a white professor at the University of Idaho, I think it was responsible for the death of those 4 students at the University of Idaho. And 2 days later, they arrested a young man who was a PhD student in criminology at the University of Washington, not 10 miles from there. Now we don't know. Maybe this blogger has some deep inside knowledge that this professor was involved, but the professor has now sued her, saying you can't just make stuff up in the
You can't just tell people I killed 4 people, right? Like,
but she's doubling down. Oh, I know it. You won't prevail against me. So my point.
This point about him saying that people can't just make things up, I guess the point that I want to express is that, but mainstream media has been called out for doing that same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've had to retract stories.
Yeah. Rachel Maddow, anybody?
I mean, all those like commentators that pushed like Russiagate, did they come back and retract those statements? Or were they given a pass because they're mainstream media?
Right. Don't get us started on the proxy war that's happening over there, you know, with the country that starts with a U and rhymes with propane.
All right, here we go.
Mm-hmm.
Point is, yes, it's dangerous. And that is more, that kind of extremes, people go, oh, we know about that. But no, it's the same thing. It's the same principle that regulates the distribution of knowledge and the assignment of the priority of what is higher or lower in the hierarchy. So when you're putting up higher stuff, I mean, it used to be it was bad. Oh my God, they're getting their news from Jon Stewart. Now that looks like I wish Jon Stewart was there to give him
Cronkite. He's like Walter Cronkite now compared.
JB, Jon Stewart is like Walter Cronkite.
I'm telling you right now, maybe he wouldn't have to be like Walter Cronkite to a lot of people if the actual corporate media actually did the job of telling the truth and being more honest about what the politicians were doing and what they weren't doing. And yet they continue to uncover for the politicians and for people who want to push austerity. So guess what? Then we have to turn to comedians like Jon Stewart, or those of us on the left, we may turn to people like Jimmy Dore or Ron Placone, because they actually have more critical thought and accuracy than the corporate media. Maybe we wouldn't have to go to them. And what about going to Bill Maher, Michael Eric Dyson? What about going to him?
Well, Bill Maher has gotten several things wrong. Like it just, I mean, you want to call out social media, and don't get me wrong, like social media does get things wrong, you know, from time to time as well when it comes to news. But Bill Maher, who has a huge platform, has gotten several things wrong.
Yes.
You know, Jon Stewart, since he wants to point to him and say he's like Walter Cronkite, let's remember the interview that Jon Stewart had fairly recently, actually, with Hillary Clinton and Condoleezza Rice, where he was talking about foreign policy. And Jon Stewart got that wrong. Jon Stewart didn't push back on them at all. And that's the person they think that we should listen to?
I think it's just sad that they are like, oh, well, we're finally, you know, we listen to comedians now, you know, but it's like, who else can you trust? Can't trust Jake Tapper. Can't trust, oh my God, what's his name? Can't trust, dude with the goatee on MSNBC. I can't remember his name. Can't trust,
Chuck Todd.
Yeah. Can't trust him. You know, can't trust David Muir. Can't trust these people, man. Because the thing is that they're stenographers for the empire. Because they've been pushing the propaganda of the empire. And when you look at actual... Sorry, go ahead.
Mainstream media is dying. So it was just announced today that CNN is closing their Atlanta headquarters. I've actually been to that headquarters there in Atlanta. Yeah, I was on vacation there in Atlanta, and I went to that headquarters. That's where the hotel was. It was actually huge, like the Atlanta one at least. They're closing their headquarters. Mainstream media is dying, people.
It's dying.
This is why they're trying to crush. Why do you guys think they had to put them on YouTube to help them get views? Because people don't want to watch CNN anymore. People don't want to watch MSNBC anymore. They got Russiagate wrong. Why would people continue to trust them?
Yep. And then even when Bernie was running, they actually kept going against him and actually kept propping up people like Joe Biden. They rather prop up Joe Biden, and you can see it in the questioning and the narrative. You can see it in just the way they would, purse things and the narrative that they were painting. They're always against the people. And so you can't. Yeah, Savvy's right.
Yeah, it's huge. That one in Atlanta, there's escalators in that building. It's huge. So if they're closing that headquarters, I can bring up the article later, JB. But what is this guy's Listen, pay attention to what's going on. Don Lemon got removed from a prime time spot to the morning show. Now, for those that come from the broadcasting field, that's called a demotion. I don't care what Don Lemon's saying. The morning shows never get as many views as the primetime shows. So they demoted dude. He just don't want to admit it. Look, they're getting rid of people. They've been firing people, laying people off. They don't know what to do with Jake Tapper. They done moved him around so many different times. They had new management come in because the ratings are so bad. This is a big wake-up call to people. I'm trying to tell you, mainstream media is dying.
Dying. Yep.
Let me go ahead with the
to what we're dealing with. Does that frustrate you as an intellectual and as a professor? Because suddenly you're in the same room with someone who doesn't read books. You're in the
read. You can stop without saying
books. Who doesn't read exactly. And so to the public, there's no difference. So on the one hand, you're put next to someone who might have a PhD, say in finance, or just hypothetically, who doesn't read about black folk, but calls himself a black scholar. We'll call him Boyce, right?
I have to ask you, JB, about this statement here where they're saying you're in rooms with people who don't read. Because my thing is, just because they're...
I'm sorry. I can't hear you over the books that I have. I'm sorry. I can't hear you. Wait. Asada Shakur, I can't hear you. Michael Parenti, I can't hear you. Blood and Mary by George Jackson. I can't. I just can't. I can't hear you.
That's so classist, JB. That's so classist. Just be like, oh yeah, you're in rooms with people who don't read. Just because someone, is reading social media, that doesn't mean they're not reading books. And I don't like it. I don't like this whole, this elite system, the black elite. I don't like this elitist shit.
Yeah. Look, here's the thing. Just because I don't read their books doesn't mean I'm not reading anything by, let's say, Margaret Kimberly. I could be reading something by Dr. Cornel West. I could be reading something, by Glenn Ford. I may not be reading your books, but I'm definitely reading. And also, while we're at it, just because someone doesn't necessarily read books doesn't mean that they're wrong about their experience in the world. A lot of us had actually stepped away from capitalism because of the experience that we've had because of capitalism. Now, we may have not picked up a book in order to learn how to concentrate our focus when it comes to reading. And that's okay, because we can get there. But a lot of us are now observing and seeing what it does to us. And we're saying, you know what? This system ain't for us. And so then somebody goes, hey, this person is saying the exact same thing. Like, for instance, you'll point to a book and be like, hey, George Jackson says exactly what you say. You may want to pick up his book and read it so that you get more of a historical analysis of what's going on. But just because somebody's not reading books, now you're insulting a lot of people's intelligence and saying that they're too dumb to even be able to recount some facts that they learned. And it's also, and let's be real, it's also ableist.
It's really messed up. I mean, just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you know everything, you know, and this mindset is it's very troubling. Let me go back in.
And
educated fools.
You got the person who just Googles stuff, right? Then you got the person who just makes stuff up and who's just engaged in kind of demagoguery, right? Then you got the white person pretending to be black on the internet with a fake profile pic. And all these people are in the same room and y'all are having a debate about whether a vaccine works. You're having a debate about, you know, the origins of civilization. You're having a debate about, God's sake, Willie Lynch, like it's 1992, right? And all this stuff is happening in a space and people can't tell the difference between you and them.
It is astonishing. You summed it up so powerfully, and it's frustrating and it is bewildering because you said.
I have to chime in here and say, when Mark Lamont says that people can't tell the difference between him and them, first of all, why are you separating the two? Okay. If it's about the struggle, we should all be on board for fighting the struggle, right? And then two, I think we all can tell the difference between someone like Michael Eric Dyson and the people he's referring to, he says the people who don't read. And I say this, we can tell the difference between it because you always dare to remind us how many books you wrote, your PhD, your academic background, your elite status. What do you mean we can't tell the difference? Of course we can tell the difference when you're sitting up here telling people I'm in a room with people who don't read. Don't be so smart and so intelligent that you feel that you cannot even hear from people who don't have the same academic credentials as you do. Okay, so let's be very clear here. And I've been on both sides, so I want to make a statement. I want people to really understand this. When you go to people in the hood with this type of rhetoric, you're going to lose people. People are not going to be willing to take you in and listen to what you have to say. You don't talk down to people. You don't reach people by talking down to them. You don't reach people by talking at them. And this type of mindset, whether it's Michael Eric Dyson, whether it's Mark Lamar, it's more so Michael Eric Dyson in this clip here. This type of mindset, this type of mentality that you are better than because you have these academic credentials. This is part of the reason why people who are part of the working class and people who are poor are not given a voice because they're looked down upon because they don't have the academic credentials. So what? You have a PhD. Guess what, Michael Eric Dyson? I taught those kids who got those PhDs. So I may not have a PhD next to my name, but I was there advising them to help them get those PhDs. You know, these letters, they don't mean as much as you think. It's just another thing to have behind your name. And what does it mean? What good does it do if you're not actually talking to the people in the community? If you don't know their plight, you don't know their struggle. So what? You got a degree. Whoop-de-fucking-do for you. What have you done since you got that degree to help out the people that were left behind? That's my question.